Welcome to Culture Alley Mandarin. Ni hao. This is Basic Mandarin Lesson 17. Let us now review some of the phrases we learned in the last lesson. Let's start with "What time is it now?" which translates as 现在几点钟? It's 11 o'clock now becomes 现在11点钟. Similarly, it's 3 o'clock now will be 现在3点钟. It's 12 o'clock now is 现在12点钟. It's 1 o'clock now will be 现在1点钟. It's 2 o'clock now is 现在2点钟. It's 5 minutes after 3 becomes 现在3点05分. And lastly, it's 3 minutes after 11 is translated as 现在11点03分. Great! Let's move on to some other sentences we learned previously. It's 5 now translates as 现在5点. In Mandarin, while it's 7 now becomes 现在7点. It's 9 now will be 现在9点. And similarly, it's 8 now becomes 现在8点. It's 5 minutes after 3 changes into 现在3点05分. While it's 3 minutes after 11 will get translated as 现在11点03分. It's 11 minutes after 7 will be 现在7点11分. Finally, it's 12 minutes after 8 is 现在8点12分. Wonderful! Let's start today's lesson. Today's objective is to cover everyday expressions of time. Today, we will learn some daily used expressions of time and use them in sentences. Let's begin with some common expressions of time such as quarter and half. A quarter of an hour is translated as 刻. 刻 is pronounced using a falling tone. Let's hear you say 刻. 刻. Great! Here's a grammar tip for you. In Mandarin, it may be helpful to look at time as if one is reading it out of a digital clock. We read time as it appears in front of us. Thus, 5:15 p.m. literally becomes now 5, measure word, 1/4. Good! Let us now see how we say it's a 5:15 in Mandarin. Once again, the sentence literally translates to now 5, measure word, 1/4. Let's take a look at the breakup. Now becomes 现在, while 5 is translated as 5. As always, the measure word becomes 点. 1 is translated as 一. Quarter finally becomes 刻. Great! Let's now look at it as a whole sentence. It's a 5:15 becomes 现在5点1刻. Literally meaning now 5 1/4. Let's take a look at another one. It's 7:45. Once again, looking at it like a digital clock will help as time is read as 7:45 p.m., making the structure now 7, measure word 3/4. Now let's see how we say it. It's 7:45 in Mandarin literally becomes now 7, measure word 3/4, making the breakup as follows. Now is translated as 现在, while 7 is translated as 七. The measure word becomes 点. 3 translates as 三. And lastly, quarter becomes 刻. So it's 7:45 is translated as 现在7:03刻, literally implying now 7 o'clock 3/4. Let's take a look at some more examples. Let's translate it's 1:45. Once again, the structure becomes now 1, measure word 3/4. Let's translate it's 1:45 into Mandarin by breaking it up. Now becomes 现在. 1 becomes 一. The measure word translates to 点. 3 translates to 三. And 1/4 becomes 刻. Thus, it's 1:45 gets translated to 现在1:03刻, which literally means now 1 o'clock 3/4. Wonderful! Let's see it one more time. It's 9:15. By now, you are familiar with the structure, which becomes now 9, measure word 1/4. Now let's see how we translate it's 9:15 in Mandarin. It will become now 9, measure word 1/4. Let's break it up. Now in Mandarin is 现在. 9 becomes 9. The measure word is 点. 1 will be 一. And 1/4 is 刻. Thus, it's 9:15 is translated as 现在9:01刻. That literally means now 9 o'clock 1/4. Wonderful! Great! Now that we have a hang of how to use quarter, let's learn how to say half for expressions like 9:30 p.m., etc. Half is translated as 半 in Mandarin, which is pronounced using the falling tone. Great! Now let's see how we say it's 6:30 in Mandarin. The structure here becomes now 6, measure word half. Let's look at the breakup. Now, as always, is 现在. 6 translates to 6. The measure word for time remains 点. Half becomes 半. Thus, it's 6:30 translates to 现在6:30, which literally means now 6 time half in Mandarin. Good job! Let's see another one. It's 11:30 a.m. The structure here becomes now 11, measure word half. Focusing on the breakup again, now becomes 现在, while 11 becomes 11. The measure word will remain 点. And once again, half becomes 半. So now, it's 11:30 becomes 现在11点半. Literally meaning now 11 time half. Wonderful. Here's another one for attention. It's 12:30 p.m. The structure here becomes now 12 measure word half. Let's break it up once again. Now will be 现在. 12 is translated as 12. The measure word remains 点, and half becomes 半. So it's 12:30 gets translated as 现在12点半. Literally meaning now 12 time half. Great! Alright, it's quiz time now. Let's see if you remember what we've covered till now. How do we say 3/4? Which one do you think will be the right option? 3克 or 半克 or 6半? 3/4 is translated as 3克. Hope you got that one right. What does 现在6点半 translate to? Does it become it's half before 6? Or is it 7:30? Or could it be it's 6:30? 现在6点半 translates to it's 6:30. I'm sure you got that one correct. Great! Now let's take a look at some other terms we use daily and learn the vocabulary required for the same. Let's start with an easy one. Early morning. Early morning will become 早上, where 早 is morning and 上 is early. 早 is said with a falling rising tone, while 上 carries the falling tone, also known as the fourth tone. Can you try that? It's 早上. Once again, 早上. Great! Now let's try and use it in a sentence. It's 5 in the morning will literally become now early morning 5 o'clock. Note that, unlike English, the expression of time, morning, evening, etc., comes before the actual time in Mandarin. Let's see how we can translate it's 5 in the morning in Mandarin by breaking it up. Now becomes 现在. Early morning becomes 早上. 5 becomes 5. And the measure word translates to 点. Thus, it's 5 in the morning will become 现在早上5点. Using the sentence structure now, morning, time, and measure word. Great! Now let's move on to the next one. Morning is translated as 上午, where 上, meaning before, is said with a falling tone, and 午, meaning noon, is said with a falling rising tone, making it 上午, or before noon. Here's a quick grammar tip for you. The word 上 has an array of meanings such as early, before, top, and other related terms. Also note that 午 is pronounced the same for noon and 5. Great! Moving on. Let's take a look at some time-related sentences using the vocabulary we just learned. Let's start with, it's 8 in the morning. It's 8 in the morning will literally become, now, morning, 8 o'clock. Once again, note that unlike English, the expression for time such as morning, evening, etc. comes before the actual time in Mandarin. Let's now take a look at the breakup of this sentence. Now translates to 现在, while morning becomes 上午. 8 becomes 八. And the measure word for time translates to 点. Good! Thus, it's 8 in the morning is translated as 现在上午八点. Note that the structure remains as now, morning, time, measure word. Good! Now let's take a look at another one. It's 9 in the morning will literally become now, morning, 9 o'clock. Once again, let's take a look at the breakup of this sentence. Now gets translated as 现在, while morning becomes 上午. 9 becomes 九. And lastly, the measure word is translated as 点. Good! Thus, it's 9 in the morning becomes 现在上午九点. Once again, the structure is now, morning, time, measure word. Good job! After morning, now let's look at afternoon. Afternoon is translated as 下午, where 下, spoken in the falling tone or the fourth tone, means ladder, and 午, pronounced in the third tone as 午, means noon. Good! Interestingly, the word 下 has a lot of meanings, like under, second of two parts, next week, next month, etc., lower, below, underneath, downwards, to decline, to go down, and finally, ladder. Similarly, the word 午 has the same pronunciation for both 5 as well as noon. Now let's use the vocabulary we learned by taking an example. It's 3 in the afternoon will literally become now, afternoon, 3 o'clock. Now let's see how we can break up it's 3 in the afternoon. Now will become 现在, while afternoon becomes 下午. 3 translates as sun. And lastly, the measure word becomes 点. Thus, it's 3 in the afternoon is translated as 现在下午3点. The structure being now, afternoon, time, measure word. Great! Let's look at another one. It's 4 in the afternoon will literally become now, afternoon, 4 o'clock. It's 4 in the afternoon in Mandarin literally becomes now, afternoon, 4 o'clock, making the breakup as follows. Now becomes 现在, while afternoon translates to 下午. 4 becomes 四. And lastly, the measure word is translated as 点. So it's 4 in the afternoon will be translated as 现在下午4点. literally meaning now, afternoon, time, measure word. Excellent! Now let's look at a new word, evening. Evening is translated as 晚上. Here again, 晚 is pronounced in the falling rising tone, meaning night, and 上 in the fourth tone means before. Let's take an example to further our retention. It's 8 in the evening literally becomes now evening 8 o'clock. Upon translating it's 8 in the evening, now becomes 现在. While evening is translated as 晚上. 8 becomes 八. And lastly, the measure word becomes 点. Therefore, the translation is it's 8 in the evening is 现在晚上八点. Good! We're through with today's lesson. All right, let's see if you remember what we've learned today. How do we say early morning in Mandarin? Does it become 下午? Or is it 早上? Or could it be 上午? Early morning in Mandarin will be 早上. How did you do there? Let's take another one. How do we say it's 8 in the evening? Is it 现在下午八点? Or 现在上午八点? Or could it be 现在晚上八点? It's 8 in the evening in Mandarin will be 现在晚上八点. Hope you got this one right. Let us now review everything we learned in this lesson. A quarter in Mandarin is 刻, while it's a quarter past 5 becomes 现在5点1刻. It's a quarter to 8 becomes 现在7点3刻. Whereas half becomes 半. It's a half past 6 translates to 现在6点半. Early morning is translated into 早上, while morning becomes 上午. Afternoon will be 下午. And lastly, evening is 晚上. Excellent! It's 5 in the early morning translates to 现在早上5点. While it's 8 in the morning becomes 现在上午8点. It's 9 in the morning can be translated as 现在上午9点. Similarly, it's 3 in the afternoon translates to 现在下午3点. While it's 4 in the afternoon becomes 现在下午4点. And finally, it's 8 in the evening translates to 现在晚上8点. Wonderful! It's time for the Culture Leaf of the day. Today, we shall talk about kites. It is generally accepted that kites were first developed approximately 2,800 years ago in China, where materials ideal for kite building were readily available. That is, silk fabric for sail material, fine, high tensile strength silk for flying line, and resilient bamboo for a strong, lightweight framework. Ancient and medieval Chinese sources list using kites for measuring distances, testing the wind, lifting men, signaling, and communicating for military operations. The earliest known Chinese kites were flat and often rectangular in shape. The picture on the right is of a Chinese kite in flight at Hampshire, UK. Kites were decorated with mythological motifs and legendary figures, while some were fitted with strings and whistles to make musical sounds while flying. The picture here is of a kite dragon more than 100 feet long. In the next lesson, we will learn a little more about expressions of time such as today, tomorrow, etc. Hope you enjoyed your lesson today. See you at the alley for the next one.